Slowly meandering through the state, the Mississippi River has long been the life source of Louisiana. It's been an economic engine, not just for the state, but for the country, a wild highway of goods that hasn't always cooperated. Yet, for Louisiana, the river has been more than a moneymaker. It's also been the state's most efficient builder of land.
Normally what happens, the river would overflow its banks annually. It would drop sediment there. It would replenish the marshes.
Over the last century, though, that sediment hasn't been delivered.
What we've done is cut off that lifeblood to the marshes.
Whatever was out there was created over thousands of years before any levees were put up. But once the levees were put up, then the deterioration started.
As a result of those levees, Louisiana is disappearing, losing roughly 1,900 square miles since the 1930s, the equivalent of losing Iberia, St. Martin, and St. Mary parishes. And according to the Coastal Restoration and Protection Authority, the cost of doing nothing would be another 4,000 square miles over the next 50 years. That's the same area as losing Lafayette, Vermilion, Acadia, Jeff Davis, and Cameron parishes.
The bottom line is that the coast is disappearing, and is disappearing fast.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's a small paradise. When you turn on there, you just lose the rest of the world. And that's what makes it so hard to see the cancer that's eating it away. It is just literally washing away in front of your eyes.
In 2016, the residents of Ile de Jean Charles, a small coastal community, were awarded a grant to help resettle further north, away from the area that they have long called home.
In its peak, they had about 600 or so folks that lived there. Now we're down to about a dozen or so families.
These residents, primarily of tribal ancestry, have been living with the knowledge that their home soon will be gone, and have been trying to ring the alarm bell on what's been going down along the coast.
You see the dead ghost trees. You can look at the bayou that's cut off. We used to fish, we used to crab in that bayou. Now it's a stagnant drainage ditch. Every time we go down as a family, you see something else. Something desperately has to be done to try to reverse it, or we just have to live with it and adapt to it.
Even though the Ile de Jean Charles can't compare to what it used to, those who have seen it disappear still say that the small strip left is a piece of paradise.
This is home. It's free of all the distractions of what we know as normal life now. It's quaint, it's beautiful, and it's something that you can't just find anywhere.
So with Ile de Jean Charles and other coastal communities like it in such dire straits, what exactly is being done to address the issue? Well, as it turns out, there are some experts out there that are hoping that a new major project for land restoration could help save the disappearing coast.
We can do marsh creation projects, we can do shoreline protection projects, but they have to be sustained and rebuilt over time as they subside or sea level rise increases.
Louisiana's coastal master plan already includes attempts to slow down the erosion, building up barrier islands and other structures to help try and protect the coast. But experts say that these aren't enough, and that without those river sediments helping to constantly replenish the coast, those efforts are in vain.
If we're going to attempt to protect and restore some of this coast, you have to simulate a natural system, and that's what the diversion is. Basically, it is simulating what would naturally have occurred had we not altered the system in a way that we did.
At the Coastal Restoration Protection Authority headquarters in Baton Rouge, engineers are working on doing just that, using a replica model of the Mississippi River to simulate sediment placement. They planned to create 2 diversions of the river, which would take the sediment and use it to help create new marshland. The 2017 Coastal Master Plan included 2 of these diversions, one in Breton Sound and one in Barataria Bay. By making 2 different channels and gate structures, engineers could divert some of the water from the Mississippi through the channels and into the bays. And the water would bring sediment along with it, and in turn, provide nutrients needed to help grow the marsh.
Just kind of gives you here the idea out here where we'll then be depositing that sediment and fresh water and forming basically a new deltaic lobe.
And while engineers are hopeful that this could help slow down erosion and build up the coast, others worry about the fresh water that would be coming in, particularly those who rely on these areas to make a living.
When you put the Mississippi River in a small confined place like Barataria Bay, at the rate that they want to flow this thing, you can completely disrupt the whole environment.
President of the Louisiana Oyster Dealers and Growers Association, Rolf Paulsina, says oystermen in particular are vulnerable to the kinds of changes in salinity that the Barataria Bay could be facing.
You know, crabs, fish swim, and I guess it affects oysters a lot because oysters don't move.
He grew up in an oyster family and spent most of his life out on the water.
You go to work before the sun comes up, and you stop working after the sun goes down, and you do everything outside.
The diversions, though, he says, will make that a harder living.
That's one of the reasons why I retired too, because where that's going to flow out is right where all my, my business was. Right where it comes out the Wilkinson Canal is there a 500-acre lease right there, and it was just going to be just completely destroyed.
Do you know people who still have leases?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What do they say about it?
Well, they're just waiting. You know, and sooner or later something terrible is going to happen.
And it's not just oysters. Shrimpers say the Barataria is a popular breeding ground for the brown shrimp. Shrimp you can't get anywhere else in Louisiana, in part because the salinity in other bays is lower, another obstacle to an already strained industry.
I'm just hoping it works out for the best for them, for what they do, because they cherish this coastline and all the bounty that it brings to everybody.
In a series of meetings, the CRPA met with members of the seafood industry, along with members of Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries, to try and balance the concerns of those whose livelihood rely on the impacted areas with the urgent need to address a vanishing coast, the impacts of which are becoming more dire. Back in Ile de Jean-Charles, the loss of so much of the coast has forced Chantel's family to leave their ancestral home behind, migrating 30 miles north to Houma, and yet still seeing the effects.
Even here, the water is coming closer and closer inland, and it's really scary. You know, it's to see that we're still 30-something miles from the coast, and every time we have a storm, no matter how little or how big it is, you see that water line get a little bit higher each time.
Many coastal communities in Louisiana worry that they too will see their homes slowly vanish into the ever-expanding Gulf of Mexico.
We're not unique to the fact that it's not going to happen other places. We just happen to be one of the first on the front lines.
But the engineers working on the diversions hope that their efforts can mitigate some of that loss and save others from seeing their homes sink into the sea, while trying to balance the needs of those that diversions threaten.
We'd have to move people back from the existing coast. We have to do that now.
It is a challenging, daunting task that we are in a major fight against. If I know Louisianans, I know they're going to fight to the end on their culture and their heritage, and we're going to do the darndest we can to prevent that from happening.
Engineering has allowed the Mississippi River to be a major provider for Louisiana's past. And now, engineering may allow the Mississippi to provide for Louisiana's future.